Warning! The following video contains a high amount of hat-wearing gamers' opinion. It may be different to your own. This is life. Super Mario 64 is a game that needs no introduction. It released in 1996 as a Nintendo 64 launch title, it was the debut of 3D platforming with a player-controlled camera, and it was the debut of the analog stick. 9 years later, Super Mario 64 DS What? It was 2004? Not in the Great Southern Land. Anyway, it released in a somewhat similar fashion. It was released as a Nintendo DS launch title, it was the debut of 3D platforming on a handheld with a player-controlled camera, and the debut of the touchscreen. Remaking Super Mario 64 is a tall order to meet, disregarding how Mario 64 itself has aged over the years up until 2019, but in 2005 it wasn't as dated as it is today. So, how well did the DS remake do? Did it improve on the 64 version, or is it hot garbage? Let's dive in and find out. I'm Hat-Wearing Gamer, and this is Super Mario 64 and Super Mario 64 DS for Original vs. Remake. Also, this is going to be in depth, so spoiler warning, I guess? I don't know. Everyone and their mother has played this game. I mean, who really cares about Mario 64 spoilers? Super Mario 64 was the first game I ever played back in 1997. I was stunned by how I could control this guy on the screen who was wearing a red hat. Red's my favourite colour, by the way. I could make him run and jump and explore this fancy imaginative world. I would go on to play other games, and although there's another Nintendo 64 cartridge that blew me away even more, Super Mario 64 still holds a significant place in my heart. Fast forward to 2005, I hear about this crazy new handheld called the Nintendo DS and a new game, Super Mario 64 DS. When I saw footage of this, I knew I wanted it. It looked like it had updated graphics and you could play as other characters. It was unreal! I wasn't able to get it on release, but I do remember the first time seeing it live and playing it myself. It was on a friend's DS, and I wanted to have a go. He let me play. However, I was playing as Yoshi. I noticed the game had only 1 or 2 stars collected, so I decided to start a new file, and then choose to play as Mario from the beginning. Oh. Okay. He's in the center of the box art, and his name is in the title, but I can't play as him. Super Mario 64 DS is the only Mario adventure game where Mario has to be unlocked to be played as. The only other game in existence where Mario had to be unlocked was Mario Golf on the N64, and even being a spin-off sport game, it's equally bizarre. Imagine getting Super Mario Galaxy and then starting up the game and realizing that you're playing as Luigi from the beginning and you have to complete the game to play as Mario. Like, what is that? For Mario 64 DS, we instead start out as Yoshi, while Mario, Luigi, and Wario join the party later on. This is one of the largest changes in the remake. The way they play have a few merits here, but also some fairly questionable decisions. Let's start with the good. My favourite inclusion is Luigi. In a lot of cases, he's an alternate method to getting stars as opposed to Mario. While most of them are fairly easy, they can still have some challenges. Luigi can go out of control while whirling through the air unless you apply a little bit of concentration. He can also run on water and scuttle, but they're not useful for anything. Even when you think water running might be useful, it isn't. Luigi's inclusion also means there are no more internet theories that he's hiding in the game like in the N64 version, but that won't stop the internet from creating more crap to feed idiots. Everyone is here, except Waluigi. Okay, where was I? Yoshi behaves almost identically to Mario except for a few tweaks. He can make eggs, hover, and spit fire. Making eggs is a fancy way of killing enemies but isn't required for collecting stars, with one exception that I'll discuss later, unless you need it to kill an enemy wearing a hat. It can also kill enemies that were otherwise invulnerable in the original, like these snowmen. Sadly though, after you rescue Mario, there's almost no reason to go back to Yoshi. There's 1 star in Snowman's Land that requires him, otherwise he's useless. Wario is the most shoehorned in character. All he does is break giant brick blocks. The metal cap adds some weight to his usage, pun absolutely intended, but overall he's just a slow moving, low jumping fist for giant brick blocks. As a side, due to Wario's weight and speed, a sense of momentum is lost when breaking blocks. Back in the N64 game, my dad found a nifty trick for taking off with the wing cap. Jump 1, break the block. Jump 2, get the cap. And jump 3, launch into flight. I applied that to other caps even if I didn't do the third step. In the DS version, that works for Mario and Yoshi, and it can work for Luigi if you do it right and not scuttle, but for Wario it's impossible because he can't jump high enough, and that's so annoying! I know it's just a minor pet peeve, but I just have to say it. Now, I did think he was just a little more interesting when I noticed him slowly sinking in water while swimming, and I thought that was a kind of cool thing. I know it doesn't add much to the gameplay, but I thought it was cool that he just sank because he's so heavy. Until I noticed Mario doing it, and all that went out the window. However, they all work for the character unlock levels since they're all built from the ground up with the new characters in mind. Due to the new character inclusions, the DS alters the way the power-ups are done. While in the N64 you get the power-ups based on the colour of the block, in the DS version the power-ups are based on the character you're playing as through the power flower. Mario actually he's a little complicated, so I'll get back to him. Luigi becomes invisible and Wario becomes metal, two things that I believe are actually fairly appropriate for their characters. Luigi is strongly associated with ghosts and Wario's tough. The downside is losing the Collect the Caps mission in Dire Dire Docks. Yoshi has a flame power-up which you only need to use once to 100% the game. Not that I want to use it because you have to stop moving to actually breathe fire. Imagine how awesome it would be to run around and shoot fire at enemies at the same time, or how satisfying it could be to run around a maze of ice blocks burning everything in your path as you run through it. Now Mario has his wing cap from the feather that functions identically to the flying cap in the N64 game. However, if he gets a power flower, he then becomes Balloon Mario, which allows him to float upwards, which in turn allows him to break some levels. I know in this context it skips the red coins, but not everyone plays 100%. Because of this power-up, the level fails to test you on platforming and it's required for beating the game. There's also only one switch in the game, and it's in the original flying cap switch level from the N64 version. Now in the N64 version, the 3 cap levels were good for teaching players how the caps work. You learn that the vanish cap can make Mario disappear and you use that to run through the bars which gets you to the star. Same thing for the metal cap. You can walk around immediately underwater in the strong current where there are some red coins, and attempts to swim in it are fruitless unless you have an exceedingly high amount of patience. The DS version doesn't offer that kind of practical teaching because even though there are brief explanations the first time you pick up a power-up, that doesn't guarantee there to be an immediate application to test your skills. The flying in the N64 version is a bit different compared to Vanish and Metal, since after pressing the switch you really have to restart the level in order to properly apply what you've just been given. I do wish there was a cannon in the level because it can teach you that you can use the cannon to launch yourself into a flying state and doesn't require restarting the level and in turn getting a near perfect run of all 8 coins. Sadly, the DS version doesn't improve on this. In fact, it's even worse because the blurb of text at the start doesn't do anything to explain how Mario flies. Oh hey, you have a new power up for flying, you can just figure it out, right? You do find out eventually when you get the feather out of the box for the first time, but that's after you hit the switch. On a side note though, I can't get over the text blurb at the start of the wing cap course in the N64 version. Pull back on the control stick to go up and push forward to nose down, just as you would when flying an airplane. When I was 5 and first playing this game, I'm glad I could reflect on my experience flying an aeroplane and apply that to video games. Despite the characters being shoehorned in, the opening of the DS version does a good job at introducing all these characters. Right after Mario pops out, Luigi and Wario pop out of other pipes and all 3 head into the castle. We quickly see Yoshi sleeping on the castle roof, and then he suddenly appears on the castle grounds and scientists have yet to figure out how he got there by just sleeping, but hey. The words of the Lakitu and the music actually bring a mild tone of worry for Mario's whereabouts, leading you into the adventure. It's an effective intro to the new players as it simply conveys the disappearance of some characters and gets you started as Yoshi. And to veteran players, this cutscene conveys that the game is going to be different to the original by reminding them that Yoshi was on top of the castle but now he's not and things have gone wrong. There are more characters to play as and more to rescue. Those descriptions sounded the same, but I'm trying to say that this is a good intro for both new and returning players. Is there something I'm forgetting? Oh yeah, this is a comparison video. The N64 game's intro works for what it's trying to convey as well, a 3D world. There's not much more to it, and there really doesn't need to be. I can't say that one intro is inherently better than the other because both of them do their respective games justice, although the 64's one is fairly dated since 3D gaming isn't really a huge wow anymore. The DS version is littered with level and hub changes and they start right after the intros. In the 64 version, Mario walks into the castle and gets started on the first stage, Bob-omb Battlefield. In the DS version, Yoshi can't even get into the castle from the start. He's forced to go back and find a rabbit with the key to the front door of the castle. This intros you into unlocking minigames and later on finding one of the castle secret stars. It's effective for that purpose, but I'm not sure if it should be a requirement this early in the game. It's not that important since you can defeat the final boss without ever catching another rabbit, and it's pace breaking for veterans who just want to go straight into the game. Perhaps catching one could be a requirement to rescue Mario rather than to get inside the castle. At this point, both games only let you into the first stage, Bob-omb Battlefield. Since Yoshi can't punch, the first mission is altered for the DS version by taking in bob-ombs thrown at you and spinning them back at the king. It actually works pretty well since spinning bob-ombs back at Yoshi doesn't require as much accuracy, and a replication of the N64 fight comes in later. A change to Bob-omb Battlefield that does rub me the wrong way is the removal of the 64's third mission. Shoot to the island in the sky is a great introduction to using the cannon. Bob-omb's level design is inviting of it since the bob-omb buddy that opens it for you is right there at the start of the level and there are no bottomless pits to accidentally land in when playing around with the cannons. Shooting to the Wild Blue in Womp's Fortress doesn't cut it because the level design doesn't show you the cannon from the start, and far more importantly, you can miss and die. Granted, it's harder in the remake to die because of the extra ground, but it's still possible. Bob-omb's third star in the DS is the search for 5 silver stars. They're similar to the 8 red coins but are different since you can't get hit and lose progress, adding comparatively higher stakes to being hit by enemies, and sometimes they jump around, not staying in one place, requiring a bit of strategy to get them. I only wish they weren't displayed on the map at all times, unlike the red coins, which are only seen on the map when you talk to a specific bob-omb. I appreciate this addition, although sometimes it was utterly useless. Bob-omb's last newish star is King Bob-omb's Revenge, and I love the way it's set up with the extra brick blocks, meaning that Bob-omb's army's defense is up. The king is serious. The fight is the same one from the N64 game, which is essential in teaching you how to grab Bowser's tail. Womp's Fortress introduces switch stars, which create a time challenge for getting a star. I think something like this warrants a timer being on screen so you don't have to worry the whole time if it's going to run out in 3 seconds, otherwise I like it. However, the way Womp's Fortress was changed to allow it boggles my mind. The area is actually fine on its own for the switch star, it's just how it affects the rest of the level. In the N64 game, you walk across this path with the stone dudes that might push you off the path and onto the grass area below if you're not careful, and that's a good start. Right after you clear those, the test comes in with the platforms that move into the wall, and if you fail, you're dead. The trainer wheels are off and the game says, you're ready for this challenge. In the DS version, the same gaps don't let you fall to your death, removing the challenge of the test, and saying there are gaps later on in the game to test you on your jumping skills doesn't cut it because the gaps in the N64 version nicely paste in their increase in difficulty. The DS version trashes that with, hey, it's easy. Now it's not. Relatively speaking. Not to mention that the existing level design wasn't properly changed to accommodate the new parts. This fence looks stupid. Bob-ombs and Womps are the two most changed levels in the game, while the rest of them are near the same, with the 7th star normally being a switch star or silver star collection. There isn't a single silver star mission I don't like, with one exception that I'll get to shortly. Lethal Lava Land makes good use of riding the shell around the lava. Shifting Sandland's pyramid puzzle replaces the 5 coins with 5 silver stars, which I think was a fairly warranted change. I get why they remained as coins in Bob-omb Battlefield, they were inside a coin circle, but in the pyramid, it makes sense. Snowman's Land turned the N64's red coin mission into a silver star mission, which I don't think hurts the level since some of the red coins in the N64 version were piled up. Wet Dry Well is just a small exploration mission in the main area, which I appreciate since the red coins are in the town section, and given its abstract level design, it makes it more interesting to explore the level and find things. Tick Tock Clock's mission is the only questionable addition since you don't really need to go far to find them. If you wait at the bottom, they'll eventually just fall to you. I think this level should have actually had a switch star instead. Speaking of switch stars, despite me liking them in concept and despite me just saying that there should have been another, they are way overdone throughout the game. A lot of times they just seem tacked onto a level. There are a few ones that I think were worth including, such as Die Die Dock since it requires a shell. However, I must bring up Rainbow Ride Switch Star. It's really weird. The switch is at the big house, keeping in mind that the original big house in the sky mission is still there. When doing the switch star, you must get off the carpet and hit the switch outside. Now it's possible for the carpet to disappear while you're off it, so the game lets you balloon and ride to the roof. Aside from the long carpet ride, it's not that bad. However, in the original Big House in the Sky mission, you can take the balloon power up to the top and get to the star just like that. You're basically doing the same mission twice. Though it's ironic because I'd rather do the DS version of Big House since you can skip the second part of the carpet ride. In the end, I think the Switch Star should have replaced the original Big House mission and the 7th star put somewhere else in the level. And that's one of the big problems with a lot of the rest of the levels. It seems like there was a lot of work put into the first 2 levels in the remake, but not much was done with the rest of them. Then there's Tall Tall Mountain, which is neither a silver nor switch star as the 7th star, but instead it's a flying 5 coins mission like Mario Wings to the Sky from Bob-omb Battlefield, but this new one is far less exciting since there's no cannon involved and doesn't have this self-imposed exciting challenge of trying to get all 5 coins in one flight run right after being shot out of the cannon. You know you tried that when you were younger and were super satisfied when you landed that perfect run. Tall Tall Mountain is take off, get coin, turn around, land, rinse and repeat. You might be able to pick up 2 coins in one run, but there's still 3 trips out at minimum. Not to mention that someone thought it was a good idea to cage in the exit to the slide, meaning that you need those aerial coins to get the 100 coin star rather than the slide, which is infinitely more fun. There are more level changes, but let's take a break from them and talk about new levels. None of the new levels join the 15 numbered courses, but instead just hold castle secret stars. I actually like most of them a lot. Sunshine Islands is really just a fun, fresh new level with an easy Silver Stars mission. You only need 1 star to get to it, so there's really no reason for it to be difficult. I like the Secret of the Battle Fort, but then I found out its name and it became slightly less interesting. I always saw this place as something with a mechanical theme and not a fortress theme. I still like the Silver Stars, but the nuance is lacking. The last 3 new levels are the character rescue levels. I love the Luigi and Wario ones. They're nice linear treks similar to Bowser stages that include a red coin mission and another star on top of that. However, the Goon Boss level for Mario gets the short end of the stick. It appears to be an explorative playground, but it's also linear because there's a defined end to the stage? I'm not sure what this level's trying to be. It's worth noting, however, that the Goon Boss battle is the best usage of Yoshi in the game by requiring egg firing. The red coins are alright, but I have this odd peeve with one of them. So, in each of the Mario, Luigi and Wario levels, the additional star, not the red coin one, requires the abilities of the characters rescued in the level, and I think that's neat. Additionally, the red coin stars require the abilities of the other 2 characters for at least 1 coin. Except Mario is required for 1 in the Goon Boss level, and when I remember this, all I'm thinking about is how sad it is that theme was lost. That's it for new levels, let's go back to changes. The igloo from Snowman's Land was completely redone, and while neither star within it is bad, especially that red coin mission, it's hard to forget the thrill of running through ice blocks with the vanish cap. On the plus side though, Die Die Docks adds more coins, which for that level's sake greatly helps the 100 coin mission. All the secret levels from the N64 are all still here with an additional star, most of which are switch stars. There isn't a single one that I don't like, but it still brings home the feeling of constant switch stars. I think the best way to remedy this would be to lower the rate of switch stars in the main courses, since those levels are more expansive and thus more can be done with them. The only switch star that I think doesn't need to be in the secret course is the one under the moat. You're using the balloon power-up, which is already a timer, so another doesn't seem necessary. That'll remove the balloon and make it a wall jumping challenge. This level requires Wario to open, so I'm not seeing a reason why they can't ramp up the difficulty a bit. There's one more castle secret star that I have to address, and I hinted at it earlier. It only takes place in the hub though, and that's the 8 glowing bunnies. The bunnies hop around the hub world and their colour and locations are determined by who you're playing as. When you catch them, they're used to unlock minigames, which I will talk about soon. In the main adventure, however, the bunnies can be glowing white, and when you catch 8 white ones, you get a star. I initially saw my brother get the star on his file, and I was kind of disappointed by it, since on my file, There were already more than 100 stars collected, and this is what the glowing bunnies resulted in? Not some amazing secret? Lame. There was so much anticipation behind the bunnies, and there's just a star. I'm just like, okay, cool. When I didn't always get a white bunny on my own file, I googled how to make them appear, and it turned out to be RNG. Even with the most optimal strat, that is, running in and out of the castle as Yoshi, it can still take a long time to do. Another change to the hub cleverly gets you some stars with the ability to walk through the mirror as Luigi while invisible. However, one change that didn't affect my perception when I was younger, but a problem I can see today, is the room where you change characters. In the N64 version, it was just for the secret slide, and the way it's designed leads you to it. All you have is 3 stained glass windows, and since they stand out, you investigate them and discover the slide. This also introduces you to the secret levels around the castle. The same room in the DS version houses the 3 other characters and the ability to switch between them. When I played the remake, I completely forgot about the slide, and I only found it when I remembered about its existence and decided to look for it. The room's design, sadly, did not lead me to it. There is a sign in the room, but who's got time for that when you could be jumping around levels? When it comes to the presentation of both games, you have to take into account the hardware. While the N64 and DS are actually fairly similar in regards to power, the games still look different. There's an obvious frame size difference between a home console and a handheld, which allows the DS version to get away with more pixely textures, not that I didn't notice when I was younger. However, the models are a lot more smooth looking in the DS version over the N64, and if you don't believe me, look at Bowser in both games and tell me he doesn't look beautiful in the DS version aside from the lack of rainbows in the final boss. I was always sad that they weren't there. Most of the audio is fairly identical, with really only one odd exception, and it's not even something new to the soundtrack, but it's just the way the cave music is remixed at the start. It's not bad, it's just different and weird. Character voices are almost on point for everyone, but I can't get over Peach's dialogue in the DS version. The fact that the lines had to be changed to account for adding characters to the game felt super weird. Now there's a big elephant in the room that I haven't talked about. The controls. The N64 game made a huge important step in gaming. The first game where you can walk around in a 3D world in any direction. With that change, a freaky bit of plastic appeared on our controllers, the analog stick. Super Mario 64 was the proof of concept game that demonstrated what the analog stick could do and changed movement controls forever. You could walk slowly by nudging the stick, run at full speed by pressing it all the way, somewhere in the middle, choose from 360 directions to face. You weren't stuck in 8 directions anymore, and while D-pads have their place in gaming, only an analog stick could work for Mario 64. But now we have a bit of an awkward situation by remaking Mario 64 onto a handheld console that lacks an analog stick or anything resembling one. So we use the D-pad. Mario 64 was designed with analog movement in mind, and so trying to run around Peach's castle with a D-pad can result into bumping into walls and very static movement. D-pads work well and better for 2D games, but an analog stick is usually better for 3D games unless the game is designed around a D-pad such as Super Mario 3D World or Crash Bandicoot. Additionally, there's a run button because D-pads only have a pressed and not pressed state rather than a centimeter of middle ground that can make Mario tiptoe, walk, jog and run. With the run button you can achieve most of that, and with the run button being Y, it's easy for your thumb to press B to jump, but to press A to dive you have to move your thumb across the face buttons quickly, and although it's possible, there's this sense of fear in where you're going which doesn't exist in the N64 version due to the lack of a run button. Let me try to explain that better. So in the N64 version you can run forward and press B to dive whenever, similar to the DS version with A. Your thumb's movement across the face buttons takes your attention off of the character you're playing as in the game, and in that brief instance you could misaim your character or at least feel like you did. This also applies to the slide kick, and even though you can get every single star in both games without diving or slide kicking once, these moves are still fun to do. It's always satisfying to kill a Goomba with a slide kick or dive because they fly into the air and explode, leaving a coin. The same can be said about the DS version, except due to its controls, it's harder to pull off, and rather than feeling satisfied, you either miss, are relieved that you succeeded, or don't do it at all because you're worried about how it might turn out. It's not all bad news for DS controls though, because one aspect is improved beyond belief. Camera controls are far less restrictive. Every analysis of the N64 game that criticizes the camera highlights this bored and wet dry world where the camera won't go behind Mario for some unknown reason, but in the DS version, you can place the camera behind the character and run through easily. Some levels force the camera into one of 8 possible views with 45-degree rotations between them, but those are usually in levels where the pathways themselves are more restrictive, removing the need for a more free-roaming camera and actually makes traversal through the levels easier. There's one downside to the camera controls, and funnily enough, this problem only exists because of the run button. Moving your thumb to the touchscreen to rotate the camera will be a jarring break in movement, while on the N64 you can just press the C buttons while pushing the analog stick. The DS does sport 2 alternative control methods, one that I think a lot of people misinterpret. The touch mode sounds like it was designed with only the left-handed in mind, since you can only use the face buttons while the D-pad does nothing. According to the instruction booklet, it seems like you get this strap that's on the back of your DS, and then you put your left thumb in it like this, and then you have this little plastic bit here, and then you tighten the strap, but not too tight because you want blood running through your thumb, and then you press down the plasticky bit on the touch screen, and then that acts as a pseudo analog stick. The problem is that without the resistance of an actual analog stick in the shell that it lives in, you keep subconsciously moving your thumb forward thinking that it might make the character run faster. The same applies to the dual hand mode, which by the way is where you use the touch pen and there's a dedicated left and right handed way of doing it. Overall, I still prefer the standard mode that I've already criticized, which I think kind of destroys what the game was trying to do. Because at the end of the N64 version, Bowser says, keep that control stick smoking. But at the end of the DS version, he says, keep that touchscreen smoking. He doesn't say, keep that D-pad smoking. We all know what the game was trying to do. On top of that, this kind of movement using a touchscreen was done far better in The Legend of Zelda Phantom Hourglass. Straying away from the main adventure, the DS throws in some mini-games which depend heavily on the touch controls, and they're actually pretty great. I have a lot of fond memories from back in the day playing these games. Even when recording footage I may have gone overboard with Wanted. I broke the record by more than 400 points and even lost on purpose because I just had to move on and stop spending so much time on this one game. Also, seeing Yoshi in those Wanted posters shows that Nintendo predicted his crime 14 years in advance. Even though Luigi appears most often, but he did host gambling games in this children's video game, so it seems warranted. Those games did actually up the rating in PAL regions. I also remember my dad telling my brother and I to not play those games. We didn't hold fast to that. In fact, Picture Poker was over 3,700 coins won over the years. Where was I? Oh yeah, the minigames all use touch controls as well. There's also multiplayer outside the adventure where 4 players can get stars and try to beat them out of each other all on a single map. I mean, it's just there. I would have preferred to have multiplayer in the minigames, but considering that feature came in New Super Mario Bros., it's not worth harping on about. Now, I want to talk a little bit about what these games have done in the industry respectively, and it actually speaks a lot about them. Super Mario 64 set a lot of groundwork for games to come. I've already talked about the analog stick and how it affected Mario 64, but in gaming as a whole, it made a world of difference. Every home console controller since has had an analog stick, somewhere. Even Sony released a new PS1 controller with analog sticks after initially launching the console without one. Mario 64 also tapped into the world of 3D gaming, and if you look at other popular games on the Nintendo 64 that played similarly, like Banjo-Kazooie or Ocarina of Time, despite that latter one not even being in the same genre, this way of walking around a 3D environment was more or less set. So what does this mean? Well, Super Mario 64 DS's movement was similar, and obviously it would be because it's a remake, but how many other DS games play like this? An exploration-based 3D platformer with a run button? There was no game like that before, and there hasn't been one since. Now obviously there's Super Mario 3D Land and 3D World, which both have a run button, but first off, their level design was about getting from A to B, and second, and most importantly, they didn't try to implement a run button into an already existing game that didn't have or need a run button to begin with. Instead, they were built from the ground up. No one tried to imitate the DS game's core gameplay, which speaks volumes about its overall quality. Even modern games like A Hat in Time cite Mario 64 as inspiration, but no one talks about how they were inspired by Mario 64 DS. You could make the argument that Mario 64 is dated, but for what reasons? Booting players out of the level after getting stars? The DS version didn't fix that, not even 6 years after Banjo-Kazooie already did. The one exception are the camera fixes. Now, I said core gameplay because other DS games do borrow from the DS version. Implementing a map into one of the screens was widely adopted on the DS and 3DS with a few exceptions. The Silver Stars came back in the Galaxy games, and touch controls were implemented for short segments, as well as menus I suppose, across both handhelds. Using Bowser's special attacks in Bowser's Inside Story, some Mario Party DS minigames, choosing attacks in Pokemon, switching items in Ocarina of Time 3D, the list goes on, while generally speaking they stay out of the core gameplay of Mario 64 DS. The only even slight exception to this is the aforementioned Phantom Hourglass plus its successor, The Legend of Zelda Spirit Tracks, where touch controls were part of the core gameplay, but they're different cans of worms for another day. All I'll say now is that they're an improvement on what Mario 64 DS set up. The only things that the DS version did that were good was the camera and the new content, whether in the main adventure or out of it. The new characters didn't mesh well with the already existing levels, meaning that I would rather just play as Mario, if not Luigi, the whole time. The only times they fit well into the levels were the new ones that were designed around them. The best parts of the controls were the minigames, which are the best usage of the touchscreen mechanics and don't have a run button. Since those, along with the camera controls, are the only improvements, I don't think Mario 64 DS should have been a remake at all. The characters were shoehorned into the original levels while the new levels were fine. If it was a new 3D platforming adventure built from the ground up, even if it had the same engine and even a lot of the similar mechanics, it might have been so much better. But it's hard to say what would have happened to Nintendo in general at the time. After all, the GameCube's life was wrapping up after abysmal sales, the DS was meant to be experimental and not necessarily succeed the Game Boy Advance initially, and remaking Super Mario 64 might have been a more safe strategy to get people into the new hardware. I personally would have gotten it either way, just seeing a Mario game on the fancy new Nintendo handheld. Regardless, the DS did become Nintendo's highest selling hardware, so maybe I'm just a Nintendo 64 fanboy who can't like a DS remake because of nostalgia. I'm Hatwarren Gamer, and this has been Original vs. Remake. Hello and welcome to the end screen, I guess. Like, I don't know how to say that without sounding like Lamb Hoot. Anyway, so thank you for watching this video. It was actually pretty quick, relatively speaking. It's only been 2 or so months since my previous video went live, which is actually really quick for my channel. The last time we had a 2-month gap was between Dream Team and Paper Jam, and I say 2 months really generously because like Dream Team came out in the middle of June and Paper Jam came out right on the tail end of August. It was like the last day or so, or second last day, something like that. Which was hold on 1 second. And the reason it was only 2 months was because half of the video was already actually made, like the script was written and the camera segments were done. I still had to record like all the audio and edit all the whole things together, but it's crazy to me that like this was just a 2-month gap between videos, and like nothing was done before my previous video aired except for one recording session of the DS version, and it wasn't like for very long. It was just like the first 2 levels or so, and like I don't know when, I think that was actually done like October or November, I think. I don't remember when. It doesn't matter. And like what's especially also surprising about this quick turnaround was simply the fact that my computer's hard drive actually died during this production period. You can still get to it, like I can still access it because it's like kind of in this, it's kind of in this little casing right here. And it's like, you know, what I've been advised is to never write to it, and I don't intend to, but I can basically plug it into my computer and retrieve everything from there, which actually was super helpful because about half the script was relying on the life of this thing. So if it turns out that I wasn't able to retrieve files from it, this video might not have come out until maybe April or so. So it was really nice just to have that, but still, just the fact that it died and like I spent basically a week without making any progress. I suppose it would have, this video just would have come out last week, if that was the case. However, doesn't mean that we're completely quiet and silent on things during the in between this video and the last one. So, for the people who saw like 2 little updates that came in the middle of February. I talked about a Q&A session, which is actually still active. You can still ask me questions. I do, however, request that you go and ask questions on the video where I announce the Q&A. I'll have it linked in the description below. Or you can respond to the tweet. I just want to reduce the number of spaces where people can ask me questions as much as possible. I don't want people to I don't want people to ask me questions here because I don't want to say, oh, I want to keep it all in one place because I'm keeping it in 2 places, but still I'd rather keep everything in 2 places and not 3 places. So if you ask me a question here, I'm not going to answer it in the video where I do the answers. So go to the update video or the tweet. Respond to me there. Those would be the best places to do it. I also announced Last Life. Last Life is a website where myself and a bunch of other content creators have post our videos where we can have forum discussions and whatnot. And there's also a Discord. Both the website and the Discord are all linked in the description. I might have to start writing how many links I have to put down though, because there's going to be a lot. I mean, I even probably going to link it's like Hungarian gamers little footage of the Crash Bandicoot video. I'll have to slide a link to that in there as well. Speaking of credits though, my third major announcement in between this and the last video was that I'm on Patreon. I had a separate video for that alone, but if you missed the news that day, yeah, I'm on Patreon. There's a link into the description. You can support me for either $1, $3, or $10. $1, $3, or $10, I guess. What they will do, the $3 access will give you access to videos 2 days early, and $10 will get you access to a live stream of behind the scenes, which I'm going to be doing tomorrow. So make sure you're there for it if you're following me on the $10 Patreon. If you're following me at the $10 tier, if you're not yet, and you're not watching this video late. If you're watching this on the day of release, you can still get the $10, get up to the $10 tier, and get access to the stream before it happens. Maybe I'm thinking roughly 24 hours after this video releases. I'm going to do a behind-the-scenes live stream where I'll show off the editing timeline and talk about some things and answer questions from patrons about this video specifically. Okay, so that's it. That's it all for those major announcements. Now, going back to the short turnaround time, another element of surprise regarding this is that I've actually recently started, well, I've recently become a uni student, which is crazy. I never actually imagined myself going to university. Like, when I left school, I was like, no, not going to uni, not for me, and now here I am at uni. Now, although I do have set times during the week to work on videos, I can't work on them all the time as much as I would love to. You know, uni has to take some level of precedence. This will mean that like time to do stuff will be reduced. Like, I mean, it was slowly getting reduced as uni started. I couldn't work on it as much because before uni started I was basically just doing this all the time. I think that was probably why I was able to do this video so quickly. And like the way uni works for or New South Wales, I guess, is that the semester one for the year usually starts around like the last week of February or first week of March, depending on which uni you go to, and continues through till June, and then it's the winter break. I'm gonna have all of July off, so I have plenty of July time to work on content, and then it comes back in at the start of August or early August, something like that, and then you have semester 2, which goes into like early November, and then it's like that huge summer long break, which is the rest of November, December, January, and February. Unless I decide to do a something over the summer, I'll make that decision later if I want to move my degree a little bit faster. Now, of course, one final thing. What am I doing next? I'm not telling you. It's only because I haven't made a 100% concrete decision. Mostly just because historically, by announcing my next video in the previous one, it means I'm basically forced to commit to the new video. Not that I regretted any of them so far. All the ones so far, I still would have done them as planned. But I'm worried that it might happen. Additionally, my next video, I'm not sure how it's going to turn out. It's not an original versus remake or in a series talk video. It's something a little different. It'll still be like, you know, a scripted video and whatnot, but it's going to be a bit of an interesting topic. That's currently what I'm planned. I don't know how it's going to turn out. I do have a fear that I might not go through with it. And if that happens, then I'll just be starting something else, because I already have in mind what I'm doing after this next video. So I hope you all look forward to that. I don't want to promise that this video will come out in June, because it might not. Like, I want to say July. July at the latest. In fact, I wouldn't even be surprised, like, knowing how empty my July is, I might even get another video out in July, but we'll see how we go. In the meantime, I'd like to thank you all so very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye. Oh yeah, by the way, Patron $1 tier gives you the credits, which is why, like, you had the credits here in the video. Okay, now I'm going.